Hey everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod with our Washington post-game show presented by Fanduel Sportsbook, your go-to source for sports betting. Whether it's a parlay or you just want to stick to the money line, you'll find all the odds you want on college basketball or any other sport you're betting on. Make sure you head on over right now to nudgeprinting.com/win. There you can enter our Fanduel player of the game. You can also enter for a free Tiff Knot sweatshirt, which I've got on today. Also, make sure you please comment if you're on YouTube, like, subscribe if you're not already, and interact with us a little bit. So much better start to this West Coast trip than last year, where the Spartans dropped both. This time, Michigan State gets the win in Seattle in a largely Spartan fan contingent arena. It seemed like 80-63.
Sure seemed like it. Yeah.
That
was something we talked about in the preview. I knew there'd be a good turnout. You just don't know how good. And from what we could see and what we could hear, I'm really interested to hear impressions of people that were there, but it didn't look quite like the USC deal to me, but probably stronger than the UCLA 50-50. At least it seemed that way.
Well, and it's a much smaller arena, I think, than even USC. It looked really tiny compared to
I bet it's
Galen Center.
I bet it's comparable to Galen Center, because Galen Center is a new arena, but it's not very big, if you remember. I'll bet the seating's comparable, but both of them under 10,000. I would assume capacity. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too, because I know I saw a tweet from early on from Graham Couch, and he said it was 70-30 Michigan State.
Okay. So maybe it's even more than I thought. Maybe it is more like USC.
Yeah. Michigan State led this game, I think, pretty much wire to wire, up 31-30 or 39-31 at halftime. Then kept it within a 5 to 8 point margin until the 10-0 run sort of just put Washington away, and then they sort of cruised in with an easy double-digit win. Another great game from Jeremy Fears, who finished with 19 points, 5 assists, 3 steals. A game where he might not have gotten a ton of assists, but he certainly dictated the pace of the game and the Spartan attack, and had some people make shots. He'd had a lot more assists too. So anyway, Michigan State will now head to Eugene, Oregon to try and stay perfect on this trip and stay in contention for the Big Ten, since today they were not given any help by any other Big Ten teams defeating the other teams are tied with or a game behind.
Just a real quick comment on that. While we're seeing some of these teams really tested, Purdue has not been impressive in any win lately, but they continue to win. Michigan not look great in their West Coast swing. They won 2. That's what matters, but didn't look great in either game. I think Illinois, Nebraska clearly has been playing as well as anybody. And then I would right now, if you're talking about right now where teams are at, Illinois and Michigan State would be the next 2, just a half tick after Nebraska, only because Nebraska hasn't lost. And of course they beat both Illinois and Michigan State. So
right.
They get the nod there, but that's how I see it. Now, the standings say Purdue is tied for the lead, which, hey, just win, baby. It's Al Davis. Just win. And Michigan's right there with Michigan State and Illinois game back. But one thing that's clear is that the Big Ten has separated into a class of 5 halves, and I guess Wisconsin at 5-2 is kind of there, but I'm not buying that the Badgers are part of that upper tier group just yet, even though Agreed. They got Michigan. I don't think so. But it's very clear that you've got this upper tier and then everybody else. Real separation. And it's going to be fascinating. The shame of it is because we're in this era where you don't have round robin home and homes.
Right.
Michigan State has got, I believe, 4 games left against the other members of that top 5. You get Michigan twice, you get Purdue on the road, you get Illinois at home. So 2 at home, 2 on the road. I haven't looked at the schedules in detail for the others yet, but I'm going to assume it's something similar. And that's just unfortunate. I mean, wouldn't we really want to see Nebraska coming into Breslin?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that would be off the chart. Illinois, a chance for revenge to go to Lincoln and steal one on their floor.
Exactly.
All of that. But whatever. We are where we are. And as I say, I guess the most important thing is that we've got this very clear separation of teams. And that's the Big Ten this year. You got 5 really good teams that I think all have good reason to think that they can not only win a Big Ten title, but go deep in March. And it's probably been a while since we could say there were that many teams in the league that legitimately had reason to believe they could do that. Because I mean, we're in mid-January firmly now.
We're a third of the way through the Big Ten schedule almost.
Right.
And
We
really imagine any of those teams winning it all.
Right. We've got a pretty good idea that all these teams are real. You know?
Yep.
So anyway.
Yeah. So I guess we'll have to just get to decide the Big Ten tournament, right? So
yeah.
Well, I don't know where to start. I guess probably just generally, to go into. I don't feel like Michigan State played their best game. Maybe that a little bit that was Washington, but Jackson Kohler especially really struggled.
They didn't play their best game, but you know what they did? They played an extremely steady game.
Yeah,
I thought
that's true.
We didn't see ebbs and flows. I mean, I was just looking at the flow chart of this game. So MSU took the lead for good with 13-14 to play in the first half. Okay, so it basically took them 7 minutes to get the lead. The next time Washington was, I just want to make sure I've got this right.
They got down to 5 in the second half as a close. I remember
they did, and they didn't get it. The next time that the last time I should say that Washington was closer than 5 was at 16-13 when Michigan State took the lead for good. So when Michigan State took the lead, Washington never really put that ultimate game pressure on them for 33 minutes. That's controlling a game. It really is. And again, they did it. I thought, I got to say something about the broadcast. I am not the world's biggest fan of Don McClain. Don McClain, for those who don't remember, was a very, very good college basketball player at UCLA. I'm assuming he got some time in the NBA too, but he's come on into our lives once the 4 West Coast schools joined because they needed people to do those games, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And I don't recall whether he did either of the games last year. We didn't have to.
We were at the games.
Instead, we had to sit through the misery of watching it in person, but. He was really good today, I thought.
I thought
he had some insightful stuff to say. And one of the things that he said toward the end of the game, which I think is dead on, and it was very evident in this one, is he said, the thing about Michigan State is that, I'm paraphrasing, but they just keep coming and they just squeeze you and squeeze you and squeeze you and wear you down. And all of a sudden you look up and there's 7 minutes to play and you're down 14 points. And you feel like you've played okay, but you're down 14 points. And that is the case with this Michigan State team. Now, we've seen they are, of course, fully capable of going on big runs and, hitting somebody with a 10-point run in 2 minutes. They're capable of doing that. But that's the MO of this team is more of what we're talking about here, more of what we saw in this game. Just playing steady, and just gradually chipping away at the game. And then at a certain point in the second half, you look up and you're buried. Yeah. And that's a credit to this team that it takes something special to play that steady a brand of basketball. And I honestly think this might have been the steadiest game I can recall this year. Not the best game, but the steadiest in terms of the level they played with from start to finish. Pretty much consistent. MSU didn't have to use a timeout in this game.
Just for end of half, tells you throwaway. Yeah.
That tells you that it was steady basketball. So I'm very impressed by that.
There's some stat. I don't remember exactly what it is as far as what defines a kill shot, but it's like when you have a 6 or 8-0 run or something like that.
Yeah.
They definitely had one this game. But I'm trying to remember how many they've given up, and it's not a whole lot.
No, well, this game. You're not going to.
You'd expect it on the road, though. You'd expect 1 or 2 from the home team.
Maybe with the emotions, yeah. But there's a couple things there. One, with Michigan State's defense, it's going to be tough to get on runs like that. The other thing is, if this was in Mackey,
then
or even Cole Center or Champaign. Dare I say it, even maybe Chrysler, maybe. Yeah. But these schools, other than UCLA, I thought, even though it was a 50-50 balance last year, I thought the UCLA fans brought it in that game. That gym was, I think we talked about it. That was as intense an environment as I can recall, precisely because you had evenly split fan bases that were both going for it.
Yeah, right.
And you don't get that very often, even in the NCAA tournament.
Almost never.
Normally, there's if you have a big turnout of people that are truly interested in the game and not there as neutral observers, it's usually just one school, not both. So
or you get it like an Elite 8 matchup where you have both schools trying to get the Final Four. You'll see sometimes that it gets a little more evenly, but like the first, second round.
I'm not trying to downplay those, but this is not that environment. Washington, even in a best case scenario, never mind one where they got Michigan State coming in and bringing the world. So that's all part of it. But you're right. Washington, that's what I was getting at, is Washington was never able to get that push where you felt like, hey, there's game pressure now. There was a time or two, a possession or two, literally one or two possessions in the second half where it felt like they were on the verge of that, where if they got another stop and a score, then they would have been there, but they never got there. Yeah.
Their best opportunity was that they got they got the stop. Then Cam Ward inexplicably just grabbed Maniquit as he's running down the floor.
Yes.
He split the free throws. They didn't score. And then it was 5 points. And then and Fears was back in the game. And that was kind of it. And then they won a 10 in a row.
Well, they missed one of the 2 free throws. They didn't score on the possession. And then Michigan State scores. It's back up to 7 and it's lights out. Yeah.
That was definitely their opportunity. Well, we'll start with Kohler just because I mentioned him already. So 7 points, 3 for 11 from the field, 0 for 5 from the field. So that'll definitely drop below 50% for the season. Split his free throws, still managed to pull down 7 rebounds, 3 more offensive. I think some of them all for his misses. 2 assists, 2 couple turnovers, a block, played 22 minutes. I thought, really he had played a pretty good defensive game. I know you could look at it and say, well, Kepning scored a lot over him. But I think that was, their plan was not to double him, obviously, and come off, double off of Steinbach or one of the shooters and just make him get him. And he was, to his credit, he was hitting all those all contested shots for the most part.
I want to say this about Kepning. I'm glad you brought it up because his numbers are not tremendously impressive offensively on the year. I think he's averaging about 7.5 points, shooting just slightly above 50% from the floor. And this is not a guy who's taken a lot of jumpers. But when I watched that game against Michigan, he did pretty much what he did tonight. He finished. And if you can finish against Michigan and Michigan State, those interior defenses, you can finish against anybody. So I'm not sure why he's got this sudden burst of confidence and productivity and efficiency, but he does. He was really good. And I agree with you. I thought Jackson played those reasonably well. The guy just hit those shots. And, sometimes you got to tip your hat to whatever he is, 7 feet, 250. And so that's how it goes. And MSU could not afford, obviously, as you're alluding to with your Steinbach comment, to switch and put Cooper on Kepning. That wasn't going to happen because Jax would not have been a great matchup versus Steinbach. You want Cooper on here. And so MSU was going to live with that. And they definitely weren't going to double him. They're going to live with it, and you see what happens, and that is that. And they got some productivity out of Kepning, but not nearly enough to stay in the game.
And then moving to Cooper to finish the 10 points, 5 of 10 from the field. I thought he got fouled a couple of those that were lobs, but whatever. 6 rebounds, 1 of offensive, 3 assists, no turnovers, and he had 2 steals as well. I thought was really impressive about Cooper, aside from his defense on Steinbach, which I thought was really good. And in the interior, they really made it. Although Washington scoring in the interior, they weren't making it easy. But when he got the doubles coming, he would move. He had a couple of really quick moves, which I thought was very impressive. And then, of course, pretty long jumpers. I mean, he had one that was outside the the top of the key. I mean,
that was
10 years
good
ago
to
or 20 years
see.
ago, that was a 3-pointer.
That was good to see. You always feel just a slight bit of hesitation
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
I don't want him. And he took one later that I thought was not a great shot. But it was great to see him hit them. And yeah, I thought Carson overall played a very solid, very much like we were saying about the team as a whole. He played a steadily impactful game, not spectacular. He's been much better at other times this year, but just steady. And that was going to be plenty good enough tonight to win this game in a walk.
Yeah, and then Jeremy Fears, 19 points, 6 of 9 from the field, just missed 1 3-point attempt, 7 or 8 from the line, had a rebound, only 5 assists, like I mentioned earlier, just the 1 turnover, 3 steals, just played 29 minutes. So not because there's a lot of Wojcik play in this game, which we'll talk about in a second. But
yeah,
a great game. I think defensively was good. We have got whatever was going on is, I think, totally gone now as far as concerns about Jeremy. And so he's starting to shape up. He's looking like he did at the beginning of the season, except I think the only difference now is his offensive production is a lot better than it was even early in the season.
He has never looked better than he has of late in terms of getting the ball into the paint. And you saw during a stretch of this game in the first stage of the second half, when we've talked about him all year being very good at baiting teams and fouling him. But man, Jeremy Fears put on a clinic of how you play as a 6'1" guard against a team with a lot of length and shot blockers and still be productive. I just thought he and finishing other shots, they showed a segment of him and the various shots he hit from about, say, 8 feet in this game. And it was a variety of ways, going over a 7-foot shot blocker and finishing, hitting mid-range jumpers, using his body to create just a little bit of room to finish a jumper. Using the thing he's been doing really effectively lately, and it's always been something he's tried to do, but he's finishing in a much better clip, is he's using the glass. He's using the glass really effectively. And that's I hate to say you toss out the lost art cliche, but it's true. Not a lot of guys use the glass effectively. And you see Jeremy Fears using the glass like a pro of late. And tonight, very effective in doing that. As we said, drawing the fouls, he's getting 8 free throw attempts up. That is always gold for Michigan State. I thought he played very well defensively. 1 turnover. And as you said, the minutes didn't have to this wasn't a game where they needed 35 out of him. Right. Anytime they can do that, and that's why they're doing it now.
Yeah.
If they see the opportunity, you bank those minutes, and people might not think it makes a difference. Believe me, come late February, early March, it will make a difference if you can find spots to save your point guard just a little bit of wear and tear here and there. The flip side of that was last year with Purdue, where I really thought the minutes that Braden, even though they play very differently than Michigan State, even so, the minutes Braden Smith had to play, I think, caught up to him because he was not as good late in the season as he had been for the balance of the year. And that can happen when you're a team like Purdue or like Michigan State, where you have a ball-dominant point guard, and you're asking, and Michigan State asks even more at Jeremy because he's also their best perimeter defender.
Right.
Braden Smith is not. So that's meaningful that they were able to get that out of him sub 30 minutes.
And then the fourth starter, Cohen Carr, finished with just a quiet game, 6 points, 2 for 4 from the field, hit his 1 3-point attempt, which looked good. Not good at the line, 1 4 from the line, 4 rebounds, 1 of them offensive, had a couple assists, had a block, just played 22 minutes. So kind of, a lot of light minutes for a lot of the starters this game, which was, it's something you can afford to do and might as well when you're on a road trip. But
the one thing I'll say
I was
about
going to say that one great rebound, just last thing for Steinbach, where he just ripped it out of his hands
Yep.
on that to stop preventing an offensive rebound. That was really impressive.
And there were another couple of his rebounds weren't huge in total, but they were impactful.
Loud. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously he had, we
The dunk.
barely even have to talk about the dunks anymore, but yeah, that was a highlight reel dunk, except his highlight reel will go on for, 10 hours. But yeah, not a huge game from him, but I thought, like everybody else, just solid, just doing what they needed him to do when he was on the floor, make a big play here and there, but, nothing consistent. The only guy who was consistently impactful offensively was Jeremy. I mean, that's just the bottom line. But they got so much quality basketball out of so many people that was more than enough. And that's a good recipe for winning, by the way. When you get contributions out of everybody, that'll usually put you in a good spot. And Michigan State did. So Cohen was just one of those guys tonight. Not spectacular, but solid.
Yeah, and you don't need to score a zillion points if you're playing really good defense. Of course, they end up scoring 80 points, so it's not like they didn't score.
Yeah.
And then finally, the last starter is Divine Ugochukwu, who I don't think he had any points in the first half. Maybe he had a 2, but he ended up with 7 points, 3 for 6 from the field, misses 1 3, splits a pair of free throws, had a rebound, no assists, no turnovers. He really didn't play point much this game, if I recall.
I don't think he played a minute at point.
He had a steal, only played 16 minutes, so minutes down a little bit. And, different. This is a much different lineup than Indiana as far as size-wise. I mean, what we talked about before, Washington's much bigger. And so, not that you can't play Divine, but you can play other players like Jesse McCullough. We'll talk about in a little bit. But I thought a decent game from Divine. He's just, again, not playing point, and which was interesting, but, maybe you don't need him to this game. That was sort of the decision they'd made beforehand.
Look, 7 points is, for him, decent offensive production. He was 50% from the floor, so he was efficient doing it. And I thought he was okay defensively. Didn't leap out as spectacular, but he wasn't getting abused. So yeah, solid game.
And then Kurtang, 11 points, 3 for 8 from the field. All those 3 were 3-pointers. He missed 2. Hit both his free throws, had a couple rebounds, one of them offensive, that was about it with 20 minutes. So pretty efficient while he's in there, and defensively again looking better and offensively looking good. I mean, you're now to the point where early in the season you were wondering what he's going to make. Now you kind of assume those threes are going in.
Yeah, and he has. I think you're right. He's obviously, we've had Divine had a stretch where he was shooting extremely well. I still think Jackson's probably the guy you most want taking a 3. But I'll say this: there are certain situations. If you need a 3 against a team that's playing kind of stifling defense and you think they're going to contest everything well, Kerr's your man.
Exactly.
And he's found a level. Yeah, I think again, not spectacular, but solid. When you stack up enough guys that are giving you 11, 7, 6, 7, 7, that adds up. And then you got Jeremy to top it off.
Yeah.
With 19, that's going to leave you in good shape. So yeah, I thought Kerr did solid things the same, just like Divine did.
Yeah, and aside from that boneheaded foul in the second half, Cam Ward with a good game. 6 points, 3 for 4 from the field, 7 rebounds, one of them offensive. I think he had just 1 turnover, had a block, played only 19 minutes, but just really, he's starting to look exactly like he did earlier in the season, and that's exactly what you want. I don't know what. Do you know what was going on with that foul? Like,
I have no idea what he was
sub out of the game or something. It was weird.
I have no idea what he was thinking. None, because you could say, well, he didn't want to get blown by. It was at 3/4 court. I don't know. I'll be interested to hear what the explanation is, but yeah, it was baffling. But put that aside.
Right. Yeah.
Great game. I mean, this was a game that, for your bigs, it was going to be a test because Washington brings it. We talked about how Kepnang really seems to be coming into his own. And obviously we know about Steinbach. And they also have, although he didn't do very much in this game, Ognisevich as well. So they've got some two experienced big bodies and then one NBA talent body. And for Cam to be in that environment against that kind of competition and deliver the way he did, yeah, really impressive. I think he's back. He doesn't look to me like he's hesitating in terms of, getting the ball around the rim. I mean, he hit a jumper in this game.
Right.
I don't know that that's one you want him taking right now, but it was nice to see. And just the way he competed on the glass, I thought very impressive on his part. So yeah, big positives continue for Cam Ward.
He is just so strong with the ball. And also when he gets it inside, you see Kohler will have to throw it out, even sometimes Cooper, but Ward just finds a way to get it up to score. I mean, if he's within 2 feet of the basket, it's so impressive, no matter how much traffic's there.
It helps in that I think he's probably, my assumption based on what people around the team say and what I've observed, my assumption is he's probably pound for pound the strongest of MSU's big men. And I think he might be. Cooper is an extremely good athlete, but in terms of, you can be a very good athlete and not necessarily be like a super explosive guy coming from a standing start, jumping off 2 feet. Ward, I think, is probably the most explosive guy in that group too. So those two things, I think, make him just better around the rim in traffic than anybody else they've got. I maintain it might not be enough time for it to happen this year, but sometime soon, Cam Ward is going to become an absolute load in the low post for Michigan State. It has been a long time for a program that used to have really strong low post play as a feature of Michigan State basketball for years and years and years. It did. The last truly great low post scorer they've had was Nick Ward.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago. Nick Ward stopped playing basketball at Michigan State in 2019. So 7 years. They've had good players. Xavier Tillman was obviously a great player, but he wasn't a low post dominator.
Mm-hmm.
Jackson Kohler can do things in the post, but he also has some limitations that I think have made him short of that. I think Cam Ward is going to be just a weapon at some point in his Michigan State career, and I'd be betting it happens pretty soon.
Yeah.
I won't be surprised if it's next year.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be shocked if he has a 14-point game this year or 15,
Easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, he's already done it against Arkansas with all kinds of length and experience and all of that. So, yeah, fully capable. He will repeat that because I think he's now back to the level he was at when they played Arkansas, when they played Kentucky, when they played North Carolina, and he looked so impressive. He's back to that level. Doing what he did today against that front line, that's impressive.
Next freshman is Jordan Scott, 6 points, 3 for 6 from the field, missed both his threes, had 3 rebounds, and just generally solid as far as defense goes. Offense, he's for a freshman, he's so steady too. I mean, very much reminiscent of Jace Richardson, different, but Jace is just so steady and kind of like you always knew what you're getting. Same thing with Jordan Scott. I think the only difference is he's just more willing to shoot, and really impressive. His 3 jumpers that he hit were all, those little curls and just like Michigan State staples.
He is so reliable. And that is a huge compliment to be giving a freshman. And that's the trait. He's not the scoring talent yet that Jace is, although I'm going to say something might strike people as a little bit controversial, but I would not be surprised, and this is not a knock on Jace, but I would not be surprised if Jordan Scott ends up having a better pro future than Jace because he's got about 5 inches on.
Physical traits different. Yeah.
But Jordan Scott that's another guy. Next year, he and Cam Ward, they're sophomores. They'll have this year under their belt, and they will have played a lot of good basketball and made a lot of big contributions to wins. But next year, they're going to ask a little more out of both those guys, and I think they will be ready. I think we will see significant jumps in productivity, which is saying something because they're both productive now. Jordan Scott, just both ends. And it's not that he never makes a mistake, which was kind of almost where Jace was. That's what made Jace so abnormal, is he almost never made a mistake. You just don't see that. But Jordan Scott is on the upper end of freshmen in that regard, where just like you had, that trust factor is so high.
Exactly. Yeah, you're not worried about him messing up an assignment or anything like that, or a switch. It's really, very impressive.
Well, every once in a while there'll be something, but it's nothing that shakes it's nothing that shakes your confidence in him that, okay, the next possession he's going to get it right, and the one after that, and the one after that. And now that, he missed a couple threes, which is unfortunate because that takes him below 50% in league play. He was shooting 50% from three in Big Ten games. So now he's slightly, I think that makes him 9 for 20 now on the year. So, 45%, terrible. But it's the mid-range stuff that he did tonight that really excites you, because it's him they can use him in different ways now. They can open up the playbook because he's a guy, Kerr's done some of that too this year. But if you have somebody, we've seen this year after year after year after year at Michigan State, they love to be able to use guys on curls in the mid-range game. Love it. They didn't really, at the start of the year, they didn't really have anybody that you looked at and said, okay, that's a reliable option in that facet of the game, right? Well, now I think you've got two guys you feel pretty good about doing that. Cohen, you're not there. But Jordan Scott and Kurtang, you're there.
Then Trey Ford got a turn. He had played a 5 minutes, split 1 for 2, hit his 1 3-point. They're both 3-point attempts, hit one of them. And otherwise,
I'm glad he got one to go. That always helps.
I don't know. That was, he's still getting his turns. He's still getting out on the floor, which, says that staff would like for him to do something, but
it's
we'll
so
see.
limited. It's so limited. And right now it does feel to me like I think Divine is holding steady. And I think in general, Kerr and Jordan are stepping up over the last, 2 weeks or so. Jordan, it's been weeks before that, but Kerr, I think. And that just isn't going to leave much.
Yeah.
That just isn't going to leave much for Trey. And especially when you got Denim Wojcik playing real minutes, which he is.
Well, I feel like Trey is now playing more as insurance policy in case something happens. They've got a guy who's not coming in cold after not playing for 5 games.
I agree with that.
Denim Wojcik had a bucket. So 1 for 4. He missed, I think, as a hand grenade 3. A couple assists. That one great pass at, I think it was Kurtang in the corner.
Yep.
Had turnover. Played 11 minutes. Played the point when Jeremy wasn't out there. I don't know. He held his own, and there's that stretch where they weren't scoring, but neither was Washington. So
hit a very impressive bucket where he used the rim.
Nice reverse
to shield him and hit a reverse. It's not easy. Look, there's one possession, and I can't remember whether it was Diallo or Yates.
It was Yates who went right over him.
Took advantage of his size. Yeah. But look, everybody knows where I was at with this, and I still think against the best opposition, like I'm sorry, I don't want to see Denham playing against Braden Smith.
Right.
I just don't want to see it. Or against what's his name from Illinois, their guard.
Yeah.
I don't want to see that. But it's pretty clear to me they're going to do this. And I think in a more competitive game against a better opponent, you wouldn't have seen them be as liberal with it as they were in this one. The minutes would have been tighter for him. They would have gone to Jeremy Moore. They did it because they had a feeling they could get away with it, and they did get away with it.
Well, and maybe
Washington
even
never made a run against Denham when he was on the floor. That didn't happen.
Right.
And in fact, I think the first half run, they might have extended the lead with him.
I think he was like +8 or something.
Yeah.
they just kept scoring when he's out there.
So nothing more to say except nice job.
And Jesse McCullough got a little bit more turn, as Izzo has said he was going to. He didn't play much against Indiana just because of the weird matchups and size. Hit his 1 3-point attempt, a couple rebounds, one of them offensive. played 8 minutes and competed hard and looked fine out there.
Yeah,
Like,
I liked his compete level in this game. I mean, obviously the minutes were not big enough where you would see major contributions, but I thought he was good rebounding. There was one play, they credited him for 2 rebounds, really should have gotten a third because there was one where he competed against Steinbach and was able to, it was a defensive rebound, but he was able to deflect the ball, and somebody else, might have been Jordan, somebody else, a guard, ended up getting the ball, but it was Jesse's work that did it. So I think he hung in there defensively when he was on the floor. It was a step forward after he wasn't really very good in his brief minutes against IU. And so that was nice to see him bounce back. I'm not surprised. I'm a big believer in him long term. And there will be games, if this was a more competitive game, maybe if Michigan State's bigs have been in some foul trouble, you might have seen more of him. And there might be those moments coming down the pike when you see the Michigans, the Illinois, the Purdue's that have size and have talent in their front courts. So Jesse's still going to be a valuable guy. And hey, the one thing we damn well know he can do rolling out of bed is shoot the basketball.
Yeah. Yeah, Celeste 7065 just said, I'm so glad Jeremy's using glass. Early in the year, I was yelling at him to use a glass. I'm guessing you weren't the only one yelling at him, Celeste. That's just my guess. Probably more Jeremy, since he's so
I agree.
Hypercritical of his own game.
Was that Celeste? Was that commenter's name?
Yeah,
she's absolutely right. I think you have seen him start to go to that with much more regularity recently, and it's a hell of a tool. Anybody who knows of a certain age, it's not something that's done a lot. Not the way it used to be anymore. I mean, I can go back. I mean, when I think about what made Kevin McHale one of the best power forwards I've ever seen, both in college and in the NBA, it was the way he used the glass. That guy would just live on 8 to 10 foot shots off the glass. Kevin Willis, a Michigan State product who was great in the NBA, became the black Kevin McHale in the NBA because he started using the glass relentlessly. It's such a tool for you to be for a smart player to be able to use. And Jeremy Fears is a smart player, and he's doing things to maximize his efficiency now in a much better way than he was, say, especially during that stretch in December of about 4 or 5 games where he wasn't playing up to the levels he had previously. And as you say, whatever was going on is in the rearview mirror now because he is just stringing together great games.
I think kids are just not as good at geometry as they used to be. Maybe that's just what it comes down
to. Maybe, but it's absolutely a huge benefit to your game if you understand how to use the glass. And obviously it's not, I'll tell you why. Well, here's one good reason why. It's because deep jumpers with the 3-point shot, you're not going to use glass intentionally on a 3-pointer. The glass is a weapon in the mid-range and closer, right? And so with those shots kind of falling by the boards a little bit, you don't have kids growing up practicing them very much.
Right.
So I think that's a good explanation maybe as to why, but Jeremy Fears is making great use of it lately.
Well, one guy who used the glass quite a bit too was Hans Steinbeck, because he was a player of Michigan Keeping the Gutter, brought to you by the Brothers Just Through Gutters. I do not know what it's like on your side of the state, but we are getting tons and tons of snow, and I just keep watching all this water run down my roof now. I'm just waiting for it to rent. But I've got great gutters. I hope you do too. If you don't or have any problems with them, concerns about them, contact the Brothers Just Do Gutters. They can take care of it. And they only do gutters. So they're not going to try and do anything else with you. They're just going to make sure that they function properly. You get 10% off if you mention Final Four when you go to our support page to get a hold of Greg or Kurt, depending where you are on the side of the state, whether you're the east or the west. So go to tffinots.com/support. And they sponsored the player to keep in the gutter, which of course was Hannes Steinbach, who finished with 17 points. He was 6 for 14 from the field, missed both his 3-point attempts, 5 for 7 from the line. He had 9 rebounds, one of them offensive, an assist, a turnover, a steal, a block. Certainly not kept in the gutter, but did not seem as it certainly wasn't shaping the game a ton. Like he wasn't he wasn't dominating the game or anything like that. So I think a decent job by Cooper to keep him from going crazy. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it was steady, like almost everything else from Michigan State tonight.
Yeah.
Really, that's the watchword
Yeah,
for
no,
me.
that's good.
They weren't, yeah, they didn't just lock him down, but they made life very tough on him. They limited him. I think he only had 6 in the second half.
Yeah.
So they kind of took him away when Washington really needed him to step up, right? And I think they made, look, anytime you're facing an NBA talent as a big man and you hold them under 50% from the floor, you've done some decent work. And that's what they
Sure.
did. They did decent work. So not a shutdown, certainly not in the gutter, but he didn't do the things that Washington needed him to have a great game. By the way, they also stopped him from a double-double. He was 1 rebound short of that. And
Right.
he's tied with Kohler for the Big Ten lead. They each have 10 of them this year. So that was important too, that he's been a great offensive rebounder, and he had 1 offensive rebound in this game. So yeah, Michigan State did what they needed to do with him. You knew it wasn't likely that he was going to be held in check the way he was against Michigan, because that was a weird circumstance with foul trouble, and he wasn't in foul trouble tonight.
Right.
So, yeah, all in all, though, solid effort. And that's what I had said in the preview. I didn't think they'd limit him quite the way Michigan did, but they don't have to. They just had to. They just had to keep him under control. Don't let him put the team on his back, and they didn't.
Well, I'm no longer in control of the rebounding contest. Is Squeegee Squad, who cleans the glass best. Make sure your windows are cleaned by the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids, whether you're in Grand Rapids or anywhere kind of close to Grand Rapids within 100 miles or so. Give them a call. They'll come out even in this weather. If it's snowing every day, they'll come out and wash those windows for you. They'll take care of the interior, the exterior, whatever it might be. You get great pricing, great people. They'll get on the ladder so you don't have to. 15% off if you mention Final Four when you get your estimate. And of course, go to the Final Four is not on the schedule.com/support or tffinots.com/support if you're lazy. There you can find links to get a hold of Troy and his team for the Squeegee Squad and have them take care of those windows. And I had gone on a heater. I had 5 in a row. I finally did not have Kohler. And I think had I worked this differently, I might have been able to pull this off, because you had Kohler and Ward. They both had 7. So you finished 14. I had Coop and Carr, who had 10, 6, and 4. So I guess maybe it would have worked out if I had taken Ward. I would have had 13. Yeah, I guess I would have won. But either way, you're cut the lead to 1. So it's 9-8, my lead going into the next game here up
Thank
west.
God. I actually, it's funny. This was a game that I didn't really look until it was over. Right before we started. And I wondered, did I get enough from Jax? Because I knew his minute. I didn't know he only played 22, but I knew his minutes were more limited than normal. And it didn't seem like he was hoovering up rebounds the way he normally does. And in fact, he wasn't. But it was just enough.
Well, Ward was a great pick.
We'll
and I think, and now it's going to be this. It's going to, I think, you make the third pick even harder now with Ward really picking up his game. And I don't know if it's good. If like Ward was 7 rebounds, he had, what do you have against Indiana? Do you have 6? I think he had.
So. Yeah, I think he had 6.
So, I mean, is that going to be sort of his new norm? You wonder, because those are 2 different types of teams. But the thing with Ward is he can kind of play small or big, and you feel comfortable having him out there. So he's going to be, as far as the other players, you might think, well, there's certain matchups like in McCullough, there's certain games you may want play him or not play him, as far as pick him. I think, you know what I'm saying?
I do. I think the Ward Carr call is going to be very difficult to make, because Cohen, you would bet on consistently playing more minutes.
Correct.
And Cohen has been, even tonight we're only at 4. I think he still rebounded well.
Yeah.
As we said, the ones he got were impressive. So it feels like he's found a level. And then, when Cam's on the floor, he's a factor, right? No matter who else is out there with him. You put Kohler out there with him, Cam's still a factor. So it is going to be very, very difficult, I think, game to game.
Well, it's going to come down to maybe the last couple games here because it's obviously really tight. So whether I wear a basketball head or you do the fight song and do part of the show with helium, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. That brings, of course, to the 5 keys of the game brought to you by Nudge Printing. Head on over right now. And this is a good reminder for Nudge Printing. You can go to nudgeprinting.com/win where you can enter for free to win this hoodie that I'm wearing. Well, not this exact hoodie, obviously. It's one that's, your own. So there's a free drawing there. Then you can also check out, you can buy our stuff, our logo apparel, or you can certainly buy any of the other Michigan State apparel. It's actually funny. I think Gabe tweeted today about a design he had made for Michigan State back in basically Sparty wearing sunglasses. Did you see that one?
The 8-bit one? Are you talking about the 8-bit design where he said he made a comment about having to, for authenticity's sake, to make sure that even the trademark was done properly?
I didn't see that one. No, this is one where he basically, it was a gruff Sparty, had sunglasses on, some palm trees, I think for probably a bowl game as my guess, something like that. Mm-hmm. And the university said, nope, you can't do that. You can't mess with they're, very, very, if you have a license for to use the brand and logo, you have to abide by their rules. And
yes, you do.
They put the nix on that. So anyway, but he does have all kinds of other cool stuff, obviously vintage things. Head on over to nudgeprinting.com. 20% off your order if you type in TFFINOTS at checkout for the coupon code. So obviously we'll begin with the first key of the game was the West Coast. Michigan State swept last year by both the California teams. Yeah, I don't remember the last time they won out on the West Coast, but I guess now it's today. So
yeah, I'm thinking it was likely in a tournament because they played in tournaments.
Oh yeah, right. I'm just thinking regular season. Yeah, sure. Yeah, right.
But yeah, it's going to be a regular. This is going to be an annual thing, right? And I think it puts to bed any. I saw some stuff yesterday of people claiming that I heard there was all kinds of off the court stuff that happened last year. Team wasn't really treating it seriously enough. And I don't buy a second of that. Not from Michigan State. I think it's just people talking. But regardless, if you had any concerns, put them to bed. This was a team they were playing today that I think was roughly comparable to the USC team that Michigan State saw last year. Might even be a tick better than that USC team. They're certainly much bigger. But you saw the way Michigan State handled business.
Yeah.
And that was really impressive to see. And look, you win any Big Ten game. Ask Purdue. You win any Big Ten game on the road by double digits, you've done good work. To blow them out the way Michigan State did in anybody else's building in this league is impressive. That's just the bottom line. Year in, year out. That's what it means.
Yeah, this is not the Michigan State football team, which I don't think has won a regular season game out west since sometime in the Johnson administration. So it's been quite some time.
True. Yeah.
Probably is. I don't know.
There haven't been a ton of them until recently, but yeah, I can think about disasters at Arizona State, Cal.
All over the place. Let's not talk about them. Yeah. Think about them at all. So the second key to the game was to stay aggressive. I didn't look at the points of the paint. I know Washington just had a gazillion points in the paint, but mainly because they weren't hitting anything outside. But Michigan State was very aggressive. I mean, Jeremy Fears especially. I mean, getting the line as much as he did.
So Michigan State had 32 points in the paint. Washington had 42. You're right, because that was the whole focus, and they got nothing done from three, and they got very little done at the line. But and they just had fewer chances to score as well. But I think Michigan State was aggressive enough. Absolutely, I do. 18 free throw attempts isn't a great number. Normally you want to be in the low 20s as kind of an average sort of showing.
Right.
But that's okay. They got enough done there. Didn't shoot them as well as they'd like to. Thank God for Jeremy Fears raising that total to get the team to 67%. And that is something that has unfortunately been showing up with more regularity lately. Is MSU struggling a little bit from the line? That stuff's got to stop. So Got to pick that up, but I thought they were decent there. Certainly, I mean, on the road to have 5 more free throw attempts than your opponent, that's good stuff. And they were very productive. If we look at, let me see, so 25, 25 for 46 on 2-pointers by my math. Pretty good. Pretty good
Yep.
work yet again. So that means you're getting the ball into the paint. And that's and we talked about Jeremy in particular kind of leading the charge that way. That's good stuff.
So pretty much your 2-point baskets, you want to average over 50%. Is that kind of the standard? You know, they were 55% or
well,
something
you want to
today.
be better. You want to be better. You want to be a little better than 50%. But
Right.
Michigan State has over like the last 4 games been way over 50%.
Yeah.
So that's encouraging. I mean, they almost 70% the other day, I think.
They
So
were. Yeah. Right.
that's really encouraging to see. And again, against Washington, not a terrible 2-point defense team, and certainly a team that's got a lot of size that you have to contend with, as we saw. So I think Michigan State was as aggressive as they needed to be. That's the short answer here.
Yeah. So the third key of the game was coherency, and this is sort of partly a thing because Washington's had so much trouble with injuries, people in and out. Of course, we didn't even talk about it. I didn't mention until just now it occurred to me that Desmond Claude is out for the season now. He'd been playing with an ankle injury that had been nagging him, and it just wasn't getting better. And so decided just to shut himself down. I mean, obviously the season's not going to go anywhere for Washington at this point, so you might as well.
I saw something today. I haven't confirmed it. I just saw one person post about it. Not sure, again, not positive it's true, but I didn't notice him on their bench, and they said that supposedly he's left the team. Which is, yeah, but this is what you get, right?
Mercenaries, yeah, right.
Mercenary stuff, yeah. It's just what you get. But yeah, I mean, you tell me, when you're watching that team, do you feel like that's a group I think their rotations made a lot more sense than they did in the first half of the Michigan game, for sure. So maybe they're now settling it down. And they did get a little bit out of Yates in the second half. He had a couple buckets in there. That would be nice for him to come around.
He was in foul trouble too, though. Yeah.
Yeah, he was pretty much all game. But it still feels to me, I mean, their turnover numbers, they had 12 turnovers. That's not horrific. But on a day when Michigan State only has 5, that's a big gap.
Yeah.
And when you have that kind of turnover gap and you are pounded on the offensive glass the way they were, that's lights out, man. Washington would have had to have been incredible from 3, and Michigan State would have had to really struggle shooting the ball for it to be competitive with that kind of gap in those 2 areas. And I think that just, that does speak a little bit to the fact that they haven't found a rhythm. And again, not all of it's Danny Sprinkle's fault. He's been dealing with injuries, guys coming in and out of the lineup relentlessly all year long. That makes the job really, really hard. And it's especially hard when on top of that, almost everybody's new to each other, new to the school, right, new to him. That's really hard to deal with. So you put all that together, it's not a surprise that they would struggle in that way. And I think the bottom line for this Washington team is going to be pretty simple. At least, maybe they can find some coherency the back end of February. But I think for the next month, my personal view is if they're going to win games, they're going to have to do it just based on their talent. And by that, I mean not impressively connected play, but just Steinbach going off for 35.
Right.
And maybe somebody, Yates or Peterson or Diallo, somebody else joins him and has 20 alongside him. That kind of stuff. And it could happen. They've got talent on there. Everybody acknowledges there's talent on that roster. It's just, I mean, they're at home and they lose by 17. What does that tell you?
Yeah. I was shocked at how bad their 3-point shooting was. I mean, there weren't a whole lot of, they had some open shots that were good, but They were really bad. I mean, 16%. They're 3 for
They're not a
19.
good.
I know they're not a good
It's
shooting team, but
yeah, it's way below
that's
even
really
that.
bad.
You're right. You're right. In the Michigan game, they were horrific in the first half, but then they sort of found a rhythm for a time in the second half. They never found a rhythm tonight. But that's the deal. Like they're not going to be able to count on the perimeter game saving them. Michigan State's good enough shooting the three that as we've seen many times this year. There are games, today they weren't great, but
no.
They were good enough, and they were the far better of the two teams.
Low bar.
Michigan State has had times where I just don't ever think, short of a fluke, that Washington with this group is ever going to likely be able to ride the perimeter game to success. They're going to have to hope they get enough to help there, but that they're getting it done other ways. They're getting it done in the paint. They're getting themselves to the line somehow with more regularity and hitting them. They're getting into transition a little more often, those kind of ways.
Yeah. Yeah, they are not, they're not good that way. So the fourth key of the game is the glass. And so let's see, Michigan State overall had a 39-28 edge overall rebounding. They had 13 offensive rebounds to just 3 for Washington. So Michigan State in the first half, I think they were almost rebounding about almost 50% of their misses. And then Washington cut that off a little bit in the second half. So they finished at a 38% offensive rebounding rate, which is down for them for the year. Washington with a 10.7% offensive rebounding rate. Points off turnover or off second chance points, 15-6 edge for Michigan State. So in some ways you could say Washington, they made the most of their 3 offensive rebounds. They got 6 points out of it, but
they did, but still a decided edge in every way you slice
9-point
it,
edge.
right? 38%, Washington's the weaker of their two ends is on the defensive glass. So you thought Michigan State would be able to have an advantage there, and they did. 38. It says something about Michigan State that we look at 38% and kind of shrug our shoulders and say, but it was okay. They did enough. And I also would say 15 points on 13 offensive rebounds. That's not dominant point production on those second chances, but it's solid. You can live with that. Where you don't want to be is you've got fewer points off those than total offensive rebounds. That's when it's a real negative. So I think it was, and the defensive glass, I mean, look.
It's getting more obscene every game.
And here's the thing. Washington was, I think they were a top 50 offensive rebounding team coming in. Let me take a quick look to confirm that.
46th.
46, so top 50. 46. I was right.
Yeah.
That is really, and you said it was 10 point something?
10.7%.
That's ludicrous. That is ridiculous. Well, I can tell you one thing for certain. Michigan State's status as the number 1 defensive rebounding team in America is not going to take a hit.
I can't imagine
that's ridiculous. Steinbach alone, you would think might be able in a given game to do more damage than that.
Right.
Just that is ridiculous. Now, I do think, I'm going to say this. I do think Washington was trying to prioritize floor balance, which they did a decent job of.
Yeah.
And so they maybe were not quite as aggressive as they normally are going after the offensive glass, but not enough to that result. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, even you think balls just bouncing funny off your foot or something, that you're going to get more than just 10%, more than that.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, I mean, when you look at fast break points, Michigan State only had a 10-9 edge. They weren't able to get a whole lot going the run. They did a little bit, but not enough to make a big decided edge, obviously. And that, probably is a floor balance issue.
Yeah. It was well below. Look, they're averaging 17 points a game on the break. So it was well below what they normally do. That's why I say I think Washington kind of prioritizing that played a little bit of a role in it, but man, it just made for a huge gap on the glass. And Michigan State didn't need the transition game to be cranked up.
Right. So the fifth K to the game was Steinbach, and I've kind of already talked about him. He certainly didn't take over the game.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to add
You
anything
just
more to that.
you don't want to let a guy like that get rolling to the point that he takes over, carries them a bit, and then other guys start feeding off him. That's the danger when you have a great player. And Michigan State definitely did not let him do that. And so that's a big positive. There's one other thing I wanted to talk about. And I posted about this a day or two ago on the Spartan Mag board. And it was something that I'd been thinking about. And then I decided to take a look into the stats and confirm it. And it's something that we have occasionally mentioned here in the Keys. We didn't in this game, but we have at certain times, especially when facing opponents that get to the free throw line a lot. Michigan State, and it's risen. It was 49th before this game. They are now 41st in the country in defensive foul rate. Tom Izzo's teams historically have not been top 50 defensive foul rate teams.
Right.
By that, just to clarify for people, what we mean by that is that's the number of free throw attempts a team gets as a percentage of, or when divided by the field goal attempts they get. So it's a way to get at how often an opponent is getting to the line on a percentage basis or possession by possession, right? Simply put. So if your foul rate is high, you're fouling a lot. And the thing about Michigan State, it's not unusual for Michigan State to have elite defenses. By the way, as of this moment, they are now the number one defense in the country. They've taken over from Michigan.
They passed Michigan.
But we regularly see Michigan State defenses in the top 20, 25, top 10 with some frequency.
When they're not good.
Not unusual. But Michigan State, we know this, as a team, as a program, prides itself on physicality. That is a huge part of the equation. And with that, usually you're going to be a bit more prone to have fouls called against you. Stands to reason, right?
Yep.
Only 3 times has Michigan State in the Tom Izzo era, this is the whole of his coaching career, only 3 times have they finished in the top 50 in defensive foul rate. All 3 of those times, they had very good to elite defenses. 2 of those years, they were in 2019 and 2001, they were top 10 defenses and also inside the top 50 in defensive foul rate. And then in 2009, I think it was, no, 2010, I'm sorry, they were merely like 27th defensively, but still really good. So here's the point. It's extremely rare that you see teams at Michigan State ever in the top 50 in defensive foul rate. When it's happened, they've had very good to elite defenses as well. Well, that equation is in place for this team right now. They're now 41st after today in defensive foul rate. They're number 1 in overall defense. All 3 of those other years they've done it, they've gone to Final Fours. So
maybe the Final Four is
a little something. Well, it
No.
stands to reason, though. It's not luck. It's not that.
Right.
What it means is, you could shut people down and you don't bail them out frequently by fouling them.
Right.
Those 2 things don't always go together. Some places they might. Some programs, in a given year, are able to do it. As we see, Michigan State, over 30 years, it's only happened 3 other times. I'm just saying, all 3 of the other times it's happened, they've been to a Final Four. So it's worth keeping in mind. I think it's something we've talked about from time to time here. It has come up, but we don't harp on it. And maybe we should be paying a bit more attention to it, because I think this team is starting to demonstrate, for starters, that it is among the best defensive teams Tom Izzo's ever had. And I don't think many people thought that would be the case heading into this season. I didn't think it would necessarily be the case. because that was a really good defensive team last year that Michigan State
Yeah,
had.
on the perimeter, they were amazing. They're
All
really
those
good.
guys gone. Right. I thought the interior would probably be pretty good, maybe even a little better than they were last year. But you had real question marks about the perimeter. Well, we don't have those question marks anymore. And that they don't compound it by bailing people out, by being too physical in ways that get you whistles. That is a big, big deal. Very big deal. So just something I wanted to mention is I'm sure we do have plenty of listeners who aren't members of the Spartan Mag Board and didn't see that post. But that's why I wanted to bring it here and just talk about it for a second. Because, by the way, if you look at today's game, well, I mentioned they jumped 8 spots, so that tells you the kind of job they did. Washington only took 13 free throw attempts. I think Michigan State had, what did they have? I lost
19, 18, 19.
No, I'm looking at fouls.
11 how many fouls they had?
11 personal fouls against Michigan.
I would say those
State.
refs let them play today a little bit too, which was nice.
They did, but that's true. But this is something that's been happening with regularity this year.
Yeah.
And to be 41st in the country means you're still doing it at a very high level compared to your peers, to everybody else who's playing as well. So I think it's very noteworthy, and it's extremely impressive, in my opinion, for Michigan State. So I just wanted to bring it up, something we'll be talking about more, and certainly as we see Michigan State go up against some teams, as I'm sure they will, that do a very good job of getting themselves to the foul line. It's important. And generally speaking, when MSU has been faced with those kind of situations, they've answered the bell.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the one thing, if you bring good defense every game, you are going to be in every game, just
Correct.
about, unless your offense is truly dreadful. And their offense is okay. I mean, it's what, top 60, something like that.
Well,
65.
It was. Let me take a quick look to see where Michigan State is at. They're up to 55. They're climbing, because they were as low as the high 60s. So they've gotten a little better during this string. And I will say, now I'm knocking on wood as I say this, with the schedule the way it is, the next 3 games, there's an ample opportunity to put up some good performances. Okay. So I could easily see this team, if they do what I suspect they will against these next 3 teams offensively, they got a chance to get into the 40s pretty quickly.
And I think too, the interesting thing about Michigan State, their defense is, if you look at just conference play, it is head and shoulders above it. Just no one's even close to what they're doing on defensive efficiency, which is just a reflection of how many points per possession you give up, basically. And they're just way below everyone else.
Adjusted for competition.
For competition. Yeah. What's interesting too about that, I think even more so, is that teams tend to be scoring more points nowadays, and yet their defense efficiency is just still so good, despite teams, and it just generally be more offensive.
Well,
be more prolific.
I think there's 2 things here that are playing out as really important for them to be the number 1 defense in America, because their defense against threes is really good. They're 28th in the country, sub 30% teams are shooting against them from 3. So what Washington did here was not a huge outlier. They regularly are holding teams down from 3, and they're solid against 2s. They're 47.1% shooting efficiency from 2. That rate's 38th in the country. So 28th and 38th against teams taking shots. That's good. It's not necessarily number 1 in the country stuff.
But you get 1 shot.
But exactly. Number 1 in defensive rebounding. You get 1 shot. You're not fouling people excessively.
Exactly. Yeah.
41st. That stuff matters. And that's why they have the number 1 defense in the country. It's because of those 2 things.
So that, of course, brings us to the Fanduel player of the game. Of course, I was telling people to go vote, and I completely messed up and did not have a place for you to vote. I got to remember to redo that every couple of days. So I apologize for that. Although I think it's pretty clear, player of the game was Jeremy Fears, who once again, who dictated the play on both ends for Michigan State, and kept the end. He was steady, and I think they've sort of followed suit the whole game.
Well, he had that burst.
Yeah.
where he was drawing fouls, and then he hit a couple shots around the rim too. That just Michigan State took it from a game that was still teetering, it was 8-10. And you felt like maybe Washington, if they can get one run, can put some game pressure on MSU. And Jeremy just kind of took that moment and put it away.
Yeah. You've seen that from other Michigan State point guards in the past, right? I mean, we most recently, Cassius Winston would be a good example, but everybody has done this who's been really good at point guard.
Yeah. It was just impressive to watch because of, and it goes along with the words we've been using, like steady. He was just so under control in this game. I mean, Don McClain, again, a good comment from him, which shocked me. He talked about at one point the value for a point guard, how important it is to be able to change speeds. And we saw Jeremy doing that all game long. He'd use a Euro step, and then he'd manage to hesitate enough to slow his body down to force the defender to do something they didn't want to do, right? That's using, and then after he did that a couple times, maybe the defense is expecting him to throw a hesitation move. Then he just goes full bore to the rim and blows by them. That's the stuff great point guards are made of. Just understanding how to play the game at exactly the pace and tempo you want to play it. And he did that in this game, I thought, masterfully. You could argue he's had better games. I mean, obviously the Indiana game, he had a double-double and had a career high in scoring, right? But I'd have to think about it. But I don't know that I've ever felt like he had as strong a game as he had and just as level a performance at the same time, where he's felt like he was at a certain level of play and it just didn't waver. He never had down moments. It was only solid.
Yeah,
it's up there.
I feel like much like with Winston, there were games where you just felt like he was just sort of controlling how the game was going to go as far as the pace.
Very much so.
And and that was more his senior, maybe his junior year. Certainly not before that. I guess I guess you'd argue Jeremy's a junior in some ways. It's his third year, he's redshirt sophomore since he just played part of a year. But for a guy who's a sophomore to be doing that, really just dictating both ends of the floor, it's impressive. Super impressive. Yeah, very impressive.
Yeah, and that's who he is. I mean, I think the way he's playing, there's no question that he is in the mix for first team All Big Ten, for some level of All American selection. And I think if the team's success keeps humming along the way it has been, you're going to see some of those things come to fruition, which is great because I expected him to have a very good year. I certainly thought he was going to continue to. One thing Don McClain got absolutely wrong is he made a comment about, Fears wasn't great last year. Bullshit, he wasn't great. He was on he had a great year. Considering everything, he had a great year. He was a big difference in the team's results versus the year before is that guy was running point. But it wasn't as productive a year in terms of the points or the assists, the counting stats. Yeah. So, but he's becoming exactly what I thought he was going to be when they recruited him, when they got him signed. I mean, this is the guy you thought you were getting. You see what kind of leader he is. He feeds into the crowd's emotions. I mean, the Mateen Cleaves comparisons, we talked about it with him before his true freshman year started. And at that point, I still remember the answer he gave us. He said, he'd heard that a little bit. He'd talked to Cleaves, I think, once at that point, but it hadn't really sunk in. I'm sure he's gotten such a steady diet of it by now that it's just, it's second nature. He knows, but it really is true. MSU's had great point guards, many of them, since Mateen Cleaves left. They've never had one that played as much like him as Jeremy Fears does in every respect.
When is the last time you recall a player at a away venue trying to get the crowd to get noisier?
They
I
did
think
it
that's the first time
multiple
I've ever
times.
seen that. I don't think I've ever seen them live. Even
Well,
when they were at USC, where there were more Michigan State fans, I
they
don't
didn't
remember
play
him doing it there
well.
because they weren't playing well. Right?
They
Exactly.
they weren't in a position. Yeah, there
That
was
was
never a
crazy. I've
moment
never
where
seen
you
that.
felt like, because normally that happens. Jeremy does that when MSU's gone on a little run. There's a reason
Yeah,
he's
or
trying to keep the energy up.
breaking for
They never
chicken or
got on a
something.
run in
Yeah.
that game.
Right.
And UCLA, I mean, maybe it could have happened in that game, but they were just fighting for their lives. They were down most of that game. It was a very, very competitive game. They had a shot to win it late, but they trailed much of the way in that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, the circumstances maybe weren't right, but you're right. How often does that happen? Almost never.
I can't remember it ever happening. I mean, because you just don't ever go into any arena. I mean, even when they go into Northwestern, where you have a decent contingent, you don't have that much overwhelming
Right.
road support. You've talked about it before. It's the Pac-12. They're getting a taste of what Big Ten fanhood is like, and it's different.
Right. That's right. And you're finding out. And
yeah, I mean, part of that's the Seahawks are playing, so I get that too.
There's excuses, but even if the Seahawks weren't playing, it was probably going to be a lot like this. Maybe not quite as bad, but a lot like it.
That's just
how it is. And here, what's the answer to that? The answer to that is your fan base needs to start showing up.
Yeah.
And I guess in turn, you as the programs need to give them a reason, which is always a big deal on the West Coast, because if you don't win, nobody cares.
Yep.
Not about college sports. Even if you win, they might not care. But especially if you don't win. And you just wonder. I thought about that today. If I was in the athletic department at Washington, what do I look at that and what do you think? I mean, Tom Izzo he hadn't talked about it in a long, long time. But I remember him frequently mentioning one of the things that really just got under his skin and inspired him to make this program into what it is, and particularly the reasons why he takes as much time with what Breslin is, what the Izzone is. It stays connected to that. I remember him talking about the first time he hosted Indiana. And I believe it was a game Michigan State actually won. But Indiana had a huge turnout. That was, Bob Knight was not gone yet. And they had a very big turnout that day at Breslin. And Izzo's feeling about it was never again. And he basically made that happen. Right. So you got to wonder, does it matter enough to any of these schools, even UCLA? Do they care enough to be, they haven't been embarrassed the way some of these other schools, but you know what? Seeing what we just saw today in Seattle, I'm betting we see something relatively similar in Eugene. And that team, I mean, they're not giving any of their own fans a reason to come out. So it should be embarrassing. You should feel a level of humiliation if you're in those ADs. I'm not sure they do.
I'm not sure they know how to fix it.
You're right.
You give students every seat, but I mean,
part of it
probably show up.
Part of it is cultural for sure, and that is and I could say that having spent time on the West Coast. Part of it is cultural, and that is a very difficult thing to overturn. I will grant you that. But Washington and Oregon are a little bit different, in my opinion, than USC and UCLA because they're not in Los Angeles. I mean, Washington's in Seattle, but Seattle is not Los Angeles. It's just not. And I think if you had a coach, a lot of these guys, and I don't know a ton about Danny Sprinkle or Dana Altman, honestly, in terms of their day-to-day. Of course, we don't follow those programs. But a lot of coaches, I would say more coaches than not, are of the John Beilein mode where they just want to coach basketball.
Right.
They don't want to deal with the glad handing, any of this other stuff that goes along with it. That's just not their thing. I mean, that was kind of the rap on Jonathan Smith at Michigan State, right, for football.
Right.
And we saw him at an alum event before the USC game. And, I mean, it's good he was there. He didn't look like he was in his element to me, just kind of observing him.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think if you're going to build it in some of these places, you would need to have the right guy. You would need to have a coach who recognizes, hey, this matters. And I'm going to visit every goddamn dorm, and I'm going to do everything I can to light a fire under my athletic department's butts, to do promotions, to do whatever it takes to drag people to the game. And then, of course, you got to do your part, which is giving them a reason to keep coming back. You got to win, and you got to play interesting basketball. You got to be compelling, but I think it's possible, but it would be a shit ton of work.
And it's intentional, which is, that's,
you have to, like I have a feeling, turn it back to Michigan State. I don't know how it's going to work with Pat Fitzgerald. I'm optimistic, but we got to see. One thing I'm pretty confident about, I think if he felt the student section was not up to par, that guy would be going to dorms and dragging people to Spartan Stadium. He's that kind of personality. And I think he's the kind of guy who recognizes that stuff matters. It matters even more in basketball than it does in football, in my opinion, just because the closed environment, the noise, it matters. And, Washington plays in a compact gym. If they had a real student section, that could be an intimidating environment. Be
like the rack used to be, right? Even though
it's possible
right on top of you.
You just have to actually get it done. So I think that's, to me, that's what's missing in some of these places. UCLA is good enough because of the tradition, and they get by based on that. But still, I would say Paulie, look, anytime Michigan State, could Michigan State ever go into Mackey Arena and have half the crowd? Not a chance in hell. No. Assembly Hall, State Farm, whatever they're calling that thing in Champaign, Kohl Center. No. The closest we've come, there have been times where maybe we've had half of Chrysler.
Right.
But that's because that school doesn't care about basketball. So,
well, hey, Dusty's out there. He's, they've had videos of him like trying to get people to these games.
Yeah, I don't know how well that's going to work.
Well, it hasn't worked great, I guess.
Some places, it's just part of the institution.
Yeah.
That you don't care.
Just know who you are. It's okay. Yeah. And we had talked actually before the game, just to go talk about a little bit of Fanduel and go on to Fanduel's Sportsbook, easy app to get on your phone. But we had thought the line was going to be about 5 points for Michigan State. We thought you'd pound that 5. And ended up starting actually like 2.5 or 3.5 points, I think.
Ridiculous.
Which was really.
There were some books that had it at 2.5 apparently, but
2.5, yeah. So hopefully you got on that if you're a betting type and made some money today, because we had some. I thought
that was really light. I mean, it might not sound like much, but 1.5 difference between 5 and 3.5, that's pretty significant. So I was shocked by that it was that light. And I don't know what to say about it, except that's one Vegas definitely got it wrong, way wrong. And to me, it was kind of easy to see coming because, Washington's at home, and yes, Washington has talent, but you're talking about a team that isn't very coherent. They're not very connected or together for some at least legitimate reasons, but that's the reality. Versus a team that is arguably as connected as any in America. What do you think is the likeliest result? I could have understood, frankly, even 5. And I understand how the math works here. So I'm not protesting that number per se. I'm just saying, me as an observer watching these teams and understanding all these things about them, I felt 5 was light versus what I thought was actually going to happen. And sure enough, we got what we got. Yeah, it was always going to come down to, the only way it wasn't going to be that is if Michigan State came out and just laid an egg. If Michigan State played somewhere near their normal, I felt like this was probably going to be, a 3-possession type win, and it was obviously a lot more than that.
Yeah, or Washington suddenly hits threes that they don't normally do. I mean, I guess against Michigan, they're 8 of 12 in the second half, so they finished 9 of 23 or something like that, so not terrible. Obviously, unlike today where they were truly awful, dreadful. I think 16% or something like that. Speaking of that, just real quickly, Michigan State, I think, has not been shooting the 3 very well. We thought it helped getting out of Breslin. They didn't shoot great today, largely because Jackson was not very good, but they ended up getting 32%, which is kind of like borderline okay-ish.
Slightly below average. Yeah.
Yeah. So
they've dropped out of the top 100 just slightly. Still 35% as a team. And the far, I mentioned it earlier, the far bigger deal with this team, trust me on this, is how well they're shooting twos. And that has been heading northward. That has been a problem for a lot of this season. It has not been a problem in the last 2 weeks.
What is it? What are they ranked now?
They are, they're not quite inside the top 100, but they're getting close. 125th. As of 2 weeks ago, I want to say
they were almost like 200, like 190 or something.
I was going to say they've gone up at least 50, 60 spots.
Yeah.
In the last couple of weeks. They are shooting exceptionally well, and they're doing it for all the reasons we've talked about. They're turning up until today. They've been doing a little better in transition points. They've been turning more second chances into points. And then you also have the big men and Jeremy being more efficient when they are taking those shots. So you put all those things together, you get much more efficiency, much better performance. And that's the real key. I mean, I'm not saying threes don't matter at all, but we know this at Michigan State because the 3-point shot is not as big a facet of their offense. I mean, I can prove it to you. In 3-point attempts as a percentage of field goal attempts, they are 255th in the nation.
Yeah.
So decidedly in the bottom half.
Yeah.
That tells you, do they matter? Yes. Do they matter as much as they do for a lot of other teams they'll face? No. What matters much more is how efficient they are from two. And that has been getting steadily better. So if we continue to see that, I can live with 32% games from three. If they're shooting the two the way they have been lately.
And the last thing I just want to briefly mention too, and we kind of talked about that kind of passing slightly, is the turnover for Michigan State, only 5 turnovers in the entire game.
Great.
They've 12 from Washington. And I want to say eight of those may have been the first half where they kind of separated a little bit from Washington. But yeah, great. And they sort of been trending in the wrong direction with turnover. So it's kind of nice to see them turn that around, because I think they're one of the worst turnover teams in the country in conference play, or in the conference.
Gotta be. I mean, they're 236th overall. And earlier this year, they were like right around a borderline top 100 team. So they've fallen off a cliff lately. So to see that was really, really good stuff. And that was, as I was saying earlier, that's when you have dominance in offensive rebounding and that kind of gap in turnovers, and you're Washington looking at being on the wrong side of both of those, you're not winning, man.
No,
you're not winning. You can have your lottery pick. You can be at home, all that stuff. You're not winning.
Yeah. And I guess the final thing I'd say is I'm somewhat surprised, but it happens all the time. So I should no longer be surprised that I feel like many of the analysts, and maybe it's just because we're looking at just a couple teams and they're looking at 300. They're not looking at 300 teams, but they're looking at multiple teams through multiple conferences. They always seem to be surprised at how well Michigan State does, because they don't have, 2 lottery picks on the team or whatever, but just as a team, they just function. They're coherent. Like we talked about that third key of the game, they have a coherency to them, and they just play really good team basketball, and it maximizes who they are.
It depends on who you're talking about. Some are better than others in that regard, but there's certain people, and I go on a rant about this for a long time. I won't.
Casey Jacobson's the one comes to mind all the time.
And there are others. Jeff Goodman's awful. I mean, there are people who just get. Goodman's a good example. So 2 years ago, I remember him just every time Michigan State would come up, it would be the whole thing is down to Tom Izzo's refusal to play the portal game.
Right.
That's why Michigan State is struggling. Not that, there were valid reasons to critique Tom Izzo. The biggest one is the point guard he chose to recruit 6 years ago. That was, to me, that's the one. That's your reason, okay? Not this other nonsense. And, what of the last year, and we're over the halfway point now, year and a half plus taught us. No, the game is not past Tom Izzo by. He doesn't need the portal to be successful. Now, people could argue, and you could have a good faith argument about, yes, but would he need to maybe be at least a little more aggressive in the portal to get over the hump and win a national title? He's obviously proven he can win the league. He can go to Elite Eights, probably good enough to go to a Final Four going this way. Can he win a national title? That's okay. I think it's possible for sure, but I understand there's a reasoned good faith argument to the contrary that is possible. But
Right.
the nonsense that was being peddled by some of these dopes was just like they just never pay attention to anything. Over 30 years, just can't pay attention to what works and why. But I could go on for days. Nobody wants to hear it. Suffice to say, there's a lot of clowns out there. There's a lot of people who are somehow getting a paycheck in college basketball media that don't merit one because they don't understand what they're watching. Bottom line.
I think you're dead on there. And Jeff Young still says that Goodman's still hating on the Spartans considering the tier below the other four that you mentioned.
I heard him the other day. I heard that shit. Yeah. You know what, man? The numbers don't say that. If you want to, any way you want to look at it, you want to look at the standings, you want to look at the analytics, doesn't say that. There's Michigan and Purdue and now Illinois are Illinois ever so slightly, I think, ahead of them. I don't know whether today changed that, but Michigan State is up to 10th in KenPom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you got Michigan still at 1, Purdue at 4, Illinois at 6, Michigan State 10, poor Nebraska getting no respect all the way down at 14. I'm sorry. Looking at those numbers and watching these teams play, I don't see gaps. I think this thing absolutely is up for grabs. And you got 5 teams. I'm fully bought in to Illinois being one of those 5. They've proven enough. I wasn't convinced early this year. I'm convinced now. The other 4 have been doing it all year long.
Yep.
So yeah, that stuff was nonsense. It is a 5-team tier. And right now, you can't tell me anybody who tells me they think they know who wins this is not worth listening to. We haven't seen those teams play each other enough. That's for starters. That's the thing.
Right.
Michigan State's got 1 game against the other top 5 teams in the books, and they lost it by 2 on the road. Am I supposed to feel badly about them based on that? I don't. It doesn't say to me they're out of anything. We haven't seen any of the others yet. Michigan hasn't played any of them.
Right.
Purdue hasn't played any of them. So how do we know? And then the eye test, if somebody's trying to tell me that the eye test says there's a big gap, no. You could try to peddle that shit 2 weeks ago about Michigan. You can't now. They got beat at home by a team I think is okay, not great, in Wisconsin. And they have been, let's just be kind and say, less than fantastic in their 2 games since then. If you want to play the comparative scores game, Michigan State wins that one by 7 against Washington. I don't think that means anything, but for some dopes, they like to play that. Yeah. So let's play.
Right. Okay.
Anyway, he's a moron, has always been a moron. He's terrible at his job. Again, I can go on and on insulting Jeff Goodman.
Well, that's why we appreciate everybody here who listens to our show, gets the real beef. If you want to support the show, head on over to our support page at tffinots.com/support. There you can find ways to give either one-time gifts via PayPal or Venmo, or certainly monthly basis at Patreon, Substack. That gives you also an ad-free audio version of the show emailed to you for every show. Speaking of which, we will be back in a day probably for the Oregon preview as Michigan State heads to the last. So there's 2 stops out on the West Coast before they return back to the Breslin Center next Saturday. So a week from now. And make sure you check out all the other sponsors: Fanduel, Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids, Nudge Printing, and Brothers at Just Two Gutters. All can be done on our support page. So until next time, the Final Four is not the schedule. Go green.